Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Peak Human. I just finished another episode with my pal, Dr. Ted Naiman. Really great guy, real genius when it comes to this stuff. He's not out there trying to make money and sell things. He's just a doctor. He works at a clinic and he writes some books in his spare time and does content in his spare time. And I just think he's nailed almost everything, really figured it out. By the end of this episode, if you listen to the end, you should be able to understand all diets really and why they're good or bad and not get tricks into being dogmatic about one camp or another. It's kind of been my goal over the years is to zoom out and not be wrong and just understand nutrition and diet on a higher level where anything that comes at me, I know what it means, how it works, if it's good or bad, how foods work. So by the end of this, you should really understand how to effortlessly keep your body composition correct. And we do a lot of the diet nutrition talk. We mention the exercise stuff and then we don't ever get back to it. We kind of ran out of time. But my Hard 30 plan actually is available. I just finally made it. I recorded some videos. It's hard30.co, or you can find it through my Instagram, my Food Lies Instagram, or it's just the ultimate way to get in shape in only 60 minutes per week. So Ted, his version is doing the similar things to failure every day. He does full body every day, pretty much. And I just do it. I just focus twice a week on doing these 30-minute sessions in the gym. This is all I do in the gym. Of course, I do other stuff. I play beach volleyball, I sprint, but in the gym, 30 minutes a day. It works. I've turned 42. You can see a photo of me online. It's going well. I'll tell you that. And yeah, it's hard30.co. I finally made my video, so you can get that. Also, get oyster pills are back in stock. My testosterone is up insane, up near like 20-year-olds. And all I've done differently is start taking the oyster pills. So that's at nosetotail.org. They're just pure oysters from Ireland. It's incredible. I believe in it even more now that I finally did some blood labs recently and saw my testosterone levels. So don't take TRT. I don't think you want any exogenous stuff like that in your body. Do it naturally. Just get the foundation. The building blocks of your hormones are a lot of them in oysters: zinc, selenium, copper, all this good stuff. So this one's great with Ted. Again, he's the man. His book, Satiety Per Calorie, is awesome. You can get a PDF of it, and he'll give you a money-back guarantee on that. And enjoy this one with my pal, Dr. Ted. All right, we're back with Dr. Ted Naiman. It's been, wow, probably 4 episodes. How's it going?
It's going great, man. How are you?
Very well. Yeah, I am in Austin, living the dream. You are in Seattle, doing the great things. Just give us the quickest recap of your daily life.
Oh, daily life. Well, like I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a full-time primary care doctor. I'm working with Andrea Seinfeld on this Hava app stuff. And so pretty much every spare second, I'm either working out, playing Ultimate, working full-time in the clinic, doing family stuff, working with Andreas on Hava, or, something like that. I have like 50 different things going on.
I love it. And they're all around this sort of intuitive health. I don't even know what to call it. Satiety is really just like an intuitive thing. I think it's intuitive eating has been co-opted by nutritionists and dietitians into like, oh, just eat whatever you want. And that's not what we're about. We're about, well, it's scientifically backed. It's about satiety. It's about nutrient density. You'll hear a lot more as we go. But just for a little more background, Dr. Ted has been a huge influence to me. One of the first people I caught on to about 11 years ago. And since then, your message has always been amazing. You know, the foundations have not changed. It's just really solid. And I just still really agree with everything you're saying. I just had an episode with Mark Sisson, and I think I mentioned you as someone that has just always been a foundation of knowledge for me. And Mark too, you know, he's consistent, has a good message. If you have a good message, it doesn't need to change much. You're not wrong, right? Like, so we did a couple episodes on our own. Then we did one debate with Nick Norwitz, who's an interesting character who's on X a lot. And then last one with Dr. Andreas, more about satiety per calorie and Hava app and all that. So we're gonna go beyond that because now you have a whole book on satiety per calorie. So where do we start? Tell us more.
Wow, man. Okay. Well, first of all, I caught the Mark Sisson episode. That was great. I love Mark Sisson. He's been saying all this stuff for decades. He's like way ahead of, of all of us. So, and his message hasn't really changed much either because he's saying pretty much the right stuff. So, 100% agree there. But yeah, so basically, I wrote the PE diet like 5 or 6 years ago because I was so excited about this protein leverage thing that nobody's ever heard of, but they should. And this new book, Satiety Per Calorie, really just widens the scope of what we're looking at, and it pretty much explains. I'm just gonna say it probably explains almost everything you see in the general diet and health outcome space. Like anything that doesn't make sense, like, why, are legumes so good epidemiologically, but they're not paleo, so we're not really supposed to eat them. Why is that? How does that work? This book pretty much explains all of those things. All of the carnivores don't like why fiber looks so spectacular in the epidemiology. But Study per Calorie explains it pretty well, I'm going to say. I think so. I'm biased, obviously. But yeah, so basically what it's doing is it just explaining how everything works, and it explains why certain diet patterns and religions work for people, why we're doing so poorly in general with standard American diet, why things that we see in epidemiology really do make sense, even if if it doesn't fit the messaging in the low carb or keto or paleo spheres. And so I think this book really just kind of lays it all out there. And I'm sure, well, I'm going to say if this isn't the single best book on the general principles of diet and exercise that anyone's ever read, I am offering a free money back guarantee, and you get to keep the book. So if somebody does find something better out there that explains this better than this book does, I would love to read it. So please let me know.
Well, I agree. I'm a bit biased too because I feel like we're just very, very aligned and we share a lot of ideas. And I am going to write my own version of this. Maybe I'll try to one up you. No, no, like you got it. No, you got it. It's over 500 pages. It has diagrams. I do agree. It explains everything, or it can explain everything. I remember we got in trouble with Nick Norwitz saying he thought you were saying that everything I say is correct and everyone else is wrong, or that I don't know how to phrase it, but it the theory of satiety per calorie can explain everything that's gone wrong with health, right? It can explain. It's like it's not that it's explains mitochondria and ATP and well, you actually do get down to that level, but you know what I mean. It's not like it does explain everything, but it can explain in the paradigm what goes wrong in people's health and how to fix it.
Right, right. And just a caveat for Nick, it doesn't explain absolutely everything in the universe, of course, but I would say that it's better than any other single concept at explaining the outcomes we see with certain diet changes and health outcomes. So I think it's the best big picture, you know, paradigm that we have.
It makes so much sense to me. I remember talking about it in Seattle 4 or 5 years ago, where what it's like, okay, we have I don't care about calories. We have a steak, we have broccoli. It has whatever calories, but it keeps me full for this amount of time. And then we have soda, which has all the calories and no satiety, right? And so then I remember like doing some hand motions like down here. And then
Absolutely.
other foods are in the middle, right? And you go from whole natural foods, so steak and broccoli at the top, soda at the bottom, and other foods are just in between.
And you came up with this exact same idea and concept at the same time that I did. Like we were talking about this in parallel. And
Yeah.
for you, it was sort of like a nutrition with your hand thing, you were like nutritional density versus caloric density. And I'm like, yes, that's beautiful. That's perfect. We're exactly on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
And you were absolutely coming up with all this at the exact same time as me, or maybe even before me, and I just didn't hear about it. So
Well, I
yeah, so
think
nicely
well,
done.
I got 90% of my stuff from you first, and then maybe it doesn't even matter who came up with this. It was also we figured out that Stephen Guyenet mentioned it too.
Yeah, this is a line right out of the end of, of Guyanet's book, which is an excellent book, highly recommended. But The Hungry Brain, and so and it's also satiety per calorie is a phrase that existed before in the medical literature, just not a lot, like a half a
Super
dozen
small. Yeah.
mentions ever. So just really trying to, and honestly, that's all I'm doing is taking things that somebody way smarter than me came up with and then just bring it to the level of public attention, hopefully, at least in a small way. Just some more people hear about it and get the concept.
So yeah, how do you start explaining this concept to people and like why it's so important? Like let's start now. Let's pitch the audience.
Yeah, and so at the beginning, I go way back and just lay out, what the heck is eating? How does it even work? What are the macronutrients? How do they get to inside something that you can eat? Where do they come from? What are the different parameters? I lay it all out. What are the macronutrients? Where do they come from? How do basically all of your fats and carbs are chains of high energy carbon bonds, and these are put there by plants from solar energy. So it's all just like solar energy stored as chemical energy. And then how is that energy stored in your body? And then what happens when you eat more energy than ideal? And and so I just lay it all out where these calories come from, what a calorie really is, how you can think about it in terms of basically carbon atoms that have to be stored in your body. And then the different storage locations, what happens when you exceed those. And then that explains metabolic syndrome and all of the energy toxicity spectrum of health outcomes that are, not good. And I pretty much lay out how you get to the point where you're trying to store more energy than you can because you were still hungry, because the satiety per calorie of the food you were eating was low. And so I have this just giant arc in the book, starting out really boring and really dumbed down and probably, more simple than a lot of people even need. And then explaining how we got to the modern food environment, which is basically nutrient dilution with highly dense, carbs and fats, refined carbs and refined fats, and how that causes us to try to store more energy than we can, and why that is insulin resistance and that is type 2 diabetes and all the things that happen downstream of that. And then how to actually go back and reverse it. Exactly what you do with food choice that changes how much you eat, because what you eat determines how much you eat to a very large extent. And so I lay it all out there, all the different components, all the levers you can pull. And then at the very end of the book, it finally gets useful and practical, where I just tell you exactly what to eat, because these are the foods with the very highest satiety per calorie, where you'll just automatically eat less and automatically have better body composition. And yeah, that's the book. It's basically starting way out at first principles. What is food? How does all this stuff work in your body? And then, what happened to the food supply? It's like how it works, how it breaks, how to fix it, and then practical tips. In fact, the book has those sort of 4 sections in it. And it is a lot. I have to admit, it's not like an afternoon read or anything like that. But so I apologize.
No, it's great because you can just it's almost like a coffee table book, right? You could just sit there, put it on your table and leaf through it. There's tons of graphics, tons of things. You can go to the end if you want, if you just want to know the answer. But for most people, you should go back to the beginning and really understand it. Because once you see this all, if you read this entire book, you would never be confused again about any new diet that came along. You would get it, why it's good, why it's bad, or how to do a good version of it. That's what I always say too. There's paleo, there's keto, there's vegetarian. You could do a good vegetarian diet if you just
Absolutely.
loaded up on dairy and eggs and made it high satiety per calorie.
Yeah, absolutely could. And I think you're right. This is kind of like pretty comprehensive, and it's a layer you could just put right on top of any diet pattern you preferred. It wouldn't matter if it was high carb, low carb, plants versus animals. In the book, I talk about how those are kind of lateral moves and not as important as people think they are. And it just really, a big purpose in this book was to help people escape from fear-based, cult-based, religious, dogmatic diet camps where a lot of people are trapped out of just, I hate to say ignorance, but like most fear comes from ignorance and not really understanding how things work. You know what I mean? But once you understand how it works, you're not really afraid of anything, and you don't have to be in a cult, and you don't have to religiously follow any certain rules or anything
Mm.
like that. So I'm just trying to give people knowledge and power and freedom, and then you can kind of do anything you want. It's like a dietary superpower once you read this book and figure it out. I mean, I hate to say it.
That's fair. No, I'm with you because you want the freedom. The ultimate freedom is to eat kind of whatever you want. I say I do whatever I want, but it's like what I want is usually the healthy option. So I don't feel restricted. I don't have to use willpower to white knuckle it through my day or through my week. I know the principles. I do what I want and I eat what I want because I know exactly what you're talking about here and I'm good. And I just got my blood test. I turned 42 last week. I'm off the charts on everything, amazing, perfect, like top 1% or more.
Love it,
Like
man. Nicely done.
thank you. Could not be better. But I do this with freedom. I do this without feeling restricted. I know that's how you feel too. You do your thing. You're not bogged down by it and you like it.
Yeah, and the amount of effort you have to expend is so low when you know precisely exactly where to put that effort. You know what I mean? It's like if you have just a really sharp knife, it's easy to cut something, no effort at all. And so when you have this like precise, exact knowledge of, what to choose when it comes to foods, it's not that hard. It's really not that. I mean, it's not like you said, you don't have to use a lot of brute force or willpower or white knuckling because you kind of know better. And that's what I think this does for people. This knowledge just gives them a lot of power, a lot of freedom. Honestly, the exercise side is the same thing. Once you know exactly what to do,
Mhm.
you can, use a way less effort and get way better results. It's kind of like, stimulus to fatigue ratio. You can get that really, really, really high. So instead of just, you know, running around for an hour and working really hard, you can just focus and do a couple things and get these basically adaptations in your body that you're looking for. So I kind of really tried to do the same thing for the exercise side. I mean, it's obviously a diet book, but I have a pretty comprehensive exercise section in there too. And I'm basically doing the same first principles kind of thing for exercise.
Which I also am 100% in agreement with, and I made it my own plan called Hard 30. It's only 30 minutes twice a week, and this is all based on people like you. I give you shout outs to Stu Phillips, I think Dr. Keith Barr, and I believe in it. We should cover that more at the end, but back to the diet side, I think the best word for the theory is it's the most elegant way to explain everything, right? It's just an I don't know if other people will disagree. Everyone has their diet camp, but I don't think anyone's put it together into a cohesive narrative and a cohesive paradigm that is what I call elegant. Would you describe it as that?
Yeah, I really would, and like obviously I'm super biased, and
Right.
obviously I'm super arrogant, and I apologize. Like I should be way more humble, but I do think it's fairly elegant. It's sort of this big picture, first principles thing that really explains so much that I just haven't seen anything better conceptually. And believe me, if I did, I would immediately jump
Adopt
on
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, and I would you'd never even hear me say "Satiety Per Calorie" ever again if there was something better out there that somebody could point out. So, until then, yeah, I think it's one of the more elegant, uh, meta concepts that we have in the diet space.
And just to say, that doesn't mean that we're just like do whatever you want. We don't have an answer. Just to skip ahead, I mean, I'm still in the same realm of what I eat, and it makes sense of why like this diet that we've landed on works. That makes sense. Like
Right.
right? It's like it's still people are like, oh, did this guy go vegan? Did this guy like go like no? I'm like, no, no, no. I still eat the same way. I still base my foods on, animal protein. I'm eating meat, eggs, fish, stuff like that, and then I'm having whole foods on the side. It explains why that's the best diet, and then you're not confused by the next diet that comes around. Or I have the freedom of like, hey, I'm having ice cream with my friend, and we're with his son, and it's his birthday, and we need to, not we need to, we want to have a nice. I'm not scared of having ice cream.
Right, right.
I just know the context of my diet and how many times I eat ice cream per day or per month.
Mm-hmm. Yep, yep. And I agree. I'm still eating the same crap. I just have a really much better way of explaining it and looking at it conceptually than I did before. And there's a lot less religiosity and there's a lot more like science. And it's just so much more wide open on the carb fat spectrum or the plant animal spectrum or any other dietary pattern somebody would want to adopt. So I just feel like it's a lot more universal, if you know what I mean.
That's exactly it. So now we're gonna get more specific. I think we've sold people by now, and if not, then they've turned off
Sorry.
this podcast. So maybe you've turned it off by now and you're not hearing this, but we're gonna get specific. So how I like to start the discussion is no one wants to be fat, yet most people are. Right? So no one wants to, have low energy and carry excess belly fat and not be able to play sports anymore. But so many people are. So why? Why do people overeat? Right? The calorie bros. Lane points out, Lane Norton, we're friendly with him, but he puts out really annoying content and he's just like, hey, people are eating 4,000 calories per day. That's the problem, not seed oils. I'm like, I didn't say the seed oils were the whole problem. We're just saying, well, and I want to be like, why? Why do you think people are eating 4,000 calories per day? Why? Why? So there you go, Ted. Why?
Right, right,
Let's
right,
talk.
yeah, and Lane, of course, is totally right, and but your point is very well taken in that why are they eating this many calories? It's like the fact that they are isn't that helpful. Like, okay, we get it, you're eating too many calories, but why are you eating too many calories? So I mean, and I dumb this all down in the book so much, but humans are basically animals, and every single animal pretty much just eats to satiety of the foods in its environment. If you give the animal different foods in its food environment, you'll get vastly different outcomes. So, I think in the book I talk about locking a bear in a cage and then just giving it peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to eat. And it's literally going to have to overeat calories to get enough weight and volume of food to not be hungry, to get enough protein to not be hungry. It might actually hedonically overeat because this is probably the tastiest carb fat combo it's ever had. And so you have all of these combinations together: low fiber, low protein, protein dilution, refined carbs, refined fats, hedonic component of carbs and fats together. And the end result is this bear is just going to automatically overeat calories and have a higher and higher body fat. And that's just because of the foods that's in its environment. Now, if it's in a natural environment and it gets to pick and choose, it will do this very nice job of mixing and matching foods to get just the right amount of protein and non-protein energy, and everything's fine. And that's the way it's been working for, a million years. But when you control an animal's food environment and give them foods that are lower in protein dilute, higher caloric density, more refined, more carbs and fats together, more hedonic, if you're basically altering all these factors that control the satiety per calorie and you're lowering the satiety per calorie, the animal will still just eat to satiety the same way it did in nature, no different. But unfortunately, it will have to eat more calories to have that satiety because of all these very specific factors that have changed. And that's pretty much what we've done. So, like, humans have just basically, we've made all our food. We've always used technology to feed ourselves. And back in the day, it was amazing because we had these like tools and weapons and fire, and we got this really great boost to nutritional density and calories, and our brain size exploded and all this stuff. And now we're still using technology to feed ourselves, and we made it cheaper, and economics came into play. And so now the cheapest food has the lowest satiety per calorie. So you basically have to overeat calories. You will overeat calories because of the food in your food environment. Every single animal on earth is like that. And the only way to escape is to change the foods in your food environment. It's food choice. You basically specifically choose foods that have a higher satiety per calorie, higher protein percentage, lower energy density, more fiber, less hedonic, less refined, anything that changes this satiety per calorie. And I list all these factors in the book and talk about them all, individually and together. And once you've raise the satiety per calorie of the foods in your environment, you just eat the satiety the same way you did before. You automatically eat less calories just on autopilot. You don't even have to think about it. It just happens. And this is true for basically every single animal on Earth. And that's kind of how it works.
Mhm. That's so great. I wanna go back 7 years, probably our first podcast. When you laid this out, it's a desert island thought experiment. If you put a human on a desert island and all they had was, like, fish and whatever, here, you do it.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I think at the time I was like, okay, if you just put a bunch of overweight people and gave them nothing to eat except like fish and salad or carrots or some sort of food that was very high in satiety per calorie, a lot higher protein percentage, a lot higher fiber, a lot lower energy density, they're pretty much just going to cruise right down to their ideal body weight and stay there forever because that's just how it works. And you literally have to have these lower satiety per calorie foods in order to generate obesity in pretty much any animal. So yeah, I mean that's it's all about food environment, food choice. And once you know what exactly to do there, then the rest is pretty easy.
So another way to look at it, I look at someone who's overweight. I was in some airports lately, a lot of big people out there. By definition, they ate too much energy. Like, by definition, they ate low satiety per calorie foods, and their body stored this extra energy as fat, right? It's like, by definition, we know that happened. That's not debated. So then you just reverse engineer it. So why did that happen? What did they eat? And I just know what happened. Right? But you
Yeah.
know what happened. It's and then you look at a fit person, it's not always too I also wanna throw this caveat. We're not saying that you can't just eat low satiety per calorie foods, meaning processed foods, and force yourself to be starving and lose weight in the short term. We're not saying that can't happen. We know that can happen. People do it all the time. They go on a vacation to Mexico, and they just eat less, and they just starve themselves, and yes, you can technically do that. But that's not what we're talking about, and that's not healthy, and that's not gonna work long term.
Right. Yeah. Basically, over the long term, every animal's eating to satiety, full stop. And so all of these parlor tricks, like, I'm going to live off of McDonald's for a month and lose 50 pounds because I just tightly controlled my calories and went to bed hungry every night. It's not that helpful. And well, it does. It totally, like at this point, calories are absolute. Yes. Every single study we've ever done, if something eats less calories, it changes the mass of that
Yeah, of course.
animal.
People think we deny
So,
physics, by the way. It's like people
right.
online think we, like, deny physics. Like, "No, no, I get physics." Yes.
Right. But it's all about this satiety per calorie, controlling the amount of calories you eat. And there's also partitioning as well. So the type of calories you eat will change where it's partitioned.
Mhm.
And energy partitioning is different with different macronutrients. And so, but again, that's all just food choice
Well,
and
explain that
food
part
environment.
specifically. Like,
Uh,
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, that's
protein.
basically the protein to energy ratio. So, eating protein supports your lean mass, and eating carbs and fats is basically pure energy that is supporting your fat mass. When you eat carbs and fats, either they're being stored as fat or they're displacing burning fat that's already on your body. They're sparing the fat that's on your body. So, you can really, just to make it super simple, you can think about your body as lean mass and fat mass, and you can think about your food as protein and non protein energy. And literally, the protein is supporting your lean mass, and the non protein energy is supporting your fat mass. And by changing the ratio of protein, non protein energy, you can absolutely change the ratio of your body composition. And we have, countless studies where if you just crank the protein percentage of the food up, you get, if you feed rodents a 50% protein diet, you'll have the thinnest, most jacked rodents you've ever seen with just the highest ratio of lean mass to fat mass. absolutely same thing true for humans. We are just animals. We're just monkeys that talk. And so it's very, very simple, almost linear, that the ratio of protein energy in your diet will your body composition will start to approximate that as well. And that's like as simple as you can get. Now, the reason why I, wrote Satiety Per Calorie after I wrote the PE diet is because there are a bunch of other factors as well, besides just protein to non-protein energy, that control overall caloric intake. And that's those things that we were talking about, like energy density and fiber and hedonics and those sorts of things. And that is definitely a whole other, layer to it. So it is more than just protein, non-protein energy. But that's about as simple as you can think about it when it comes to body composition outcomes.
It's the biggest lever. Yeah, it's the most important. You wrote the book first, and then yes, we can go over each of those things as we go. But I want to stick to the protein leverage and this protein topic first. I had the doctors Robinheimer and Simpson on their book Eat Like the Animals or Five Appetites. For some reason, there's two different names to the book. Amazing book, except they think that protein is bad for you in the middle age years, which is weird because they're kind of mainstream. They kind of got they're Australian. I think a lot of the like guidelines and stuff really got in their head. They're
Well, some of what they're saying is accurate. So what they're saying is that anytime you dilute protein with something else, you're going to change things, right? If you dilute protein with refined carbs and refined fats, you're going to gain 1,000,000,000 pounds and you're just going to be fat as hell and diabetic, right? So that's the worst. But if you dilute protein with like fiber and water, you will have smaller and smaller and smaller body mass. And that kind of explains vegans. So like look at all your ultra vegans. They have very low body mass. They have very low body fat. They have very low lean mass. Your pencil necked vegan, but they are living forever because they're they have very low body mass, and that is actually good for health and longevity. Like if you're to a point, So if you're just smaller and thinner and lighter in general, it saves you from a lot of bad stuff. The problem is if your protein gets low enough, you are also low on lean mass. I'm talking sarcopenia, osteopenia, osteoporosis, frailty, weakness. These are all really bad. So that's why you want to go too low on the protein dilution. And that's where a lot of vegans are. They've diluted protein out so much with fiber and water that, yes, they're thin as hell and they're like Freely the banana girl or whatever. And, but their lean mass is also really, really low. So it is definitely a U-shaped curve. But what they're saying, where if you're diluting protein with fiber and water, you are going to be thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. And that is why these vegan diets work and why these vegan people lose a ton of weight and have very low mass. So on the other hand, my goal in life, my whole goal is to have the highest lean mass at the lowest fat mass. You know what I'm saying? So I am eating more protein and but like Raubenheimer Simpson, they're basically not wrong. I mean, I think they're brilliant. I love those guys. They're way smarter than me and they're right about pretty much everything. And they are actually right about diluting protein with fiber and water. You're probably going to get some sort of benefit, but then what they're not looking at is the frailty and the sarcopenia and the osteopenia. And in the rodent studies, or the rodents are just protected in a cage, and it's a little bit different than like real world human, where if you can't do certain things physically, you're not strong enough, you're toast. You know what I mean? So
I'm
I'm
talking
a
about
little
in
more,
old age too. Yeah, like if you
yeah,
fall down, if you have low lean mass into old age, you fall down, you're gonna die. And so you did all this work of being vegan
right.
and eating terrible foods your whole life, and then you tip over and you're done.
And Mark Sisson, of course, the GOAT, just nailed it on that episode that you recently had, where he's like, I'm not really worried about longevity as much as a health span. So he's like, I'm going to live to 90, but I'm going to be jacked and paddleboarding. He'll be playing Ultimate like the
Yeah,
day before he dies.
yeah.
It's going to be some serious health span, not just lifespan. And that I think is totally true. And that's where it's at. And this is all on a spectrum, and you have to find the sweet spot where you're kind of getting longevity, but you're super getting, health span. And that's I think the holy grail.
Well, yeah, we're not talking about also being a bodybuilder and like chugging protein shakes and trying to be like this insane superhuman. Like Ted and I are, just leaner. We carry muscle mass, but we're not like gonna like shock someone if we with our size. Like we're not a hulking shadow.
Right, right, right. And
Um,
a lot of that is also genetic. So, like in the book, I talk about genetic bracketing, right? So, how much muscle you can possibly ever have is very rigidly bracketed by your genetics and your hormones and all of these sorts of things. And what you want to do is just be as far to the high end of your bracket as you can get, which you can absolutely do with diet and exercise. So, like, you're never going to be a mass monster, open body building Arnold
mhm,
Schwarzenegger type person, and neither am I. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so, like, but can you be at the upper end of your genetic bracket for lean mass, and the lower end for fat mass? Hell yes, and that's what you're doing with diet and
Mhm.
exercise.
Yeah. And then to finish off protein levers before we move on, you did the bear sort of thought experiment, but there were studies and they did do them with rodents. So just kind of break that down. I love that example of just doing simple experiments of diluting the rodent chow and then seeing the results.
Yeah, and we actually have tons and tons of rodent studies now and on all of these factors. And you can literally make rodents fatter by doubling the energy density of their chow, by diluting protein with any kind of refined carbs or fats, either one or both. And so rodent studies really are kind of helpful. I mean, because you can absolutely see how this manipulation just immediately changes how much they eat automatically. And protein percent's huge. That's one of the biggest levers. But energy density is huge as well. They'll eat twice as much of a food with twice the energy density. So all of these things are very real, and rodent studies really do kind of elucidate that. And so I do pay attention to those. Although,
Oh yeah.
pretty much everything we're using in the Hava app to create the score, we're using usually meta-analysis of human randomized controlled trials. So we have this kind of information on like exactly what change in protein percent will change in calories, and exactly how many grams of fiber per 1,000 calories will change how much people eat in these randomized controlled human trials. So that we need more studies like that,
Mhm.
but we do have everything we need already in the medical literature to know what these levers are and roughly how they work.
Yes. So I should say that yes, you guys. Well, there is real science with real people. So we're not relying on rodent data. But to me, just using a specific example really helps illustrate it for people. So do you remember any specific example? I want to do like a fifth grade explanation of like what happens with the rodent study because I don't know if we're just blowing past some people. I'm picturing people that I know in Austin, and I'm like, have they understood what we're talking about, or is Ted talking too fat. I don't know. Do the fifth grade rodent study protein leverage.
Got it, got it. Well, I mean, we definitely so if you take rodent chow and increase the protein percentage of calories and leave everything else the same, basically animals will just eat less and less calories in almost a linear fashion between about 10% protein and 30 or 40% protein. It's just a linear nosedive where the higher the protein percentage of your food, the less you eat, full stop, because of protein leverage. Basically, all animals are wired to eat until they get enough protein. And so it has this very, very strong um, it's the gear ratio is almost 10 to 1, where for each percent of protein higher in the diet you eat that much less energy. I mean, you eat 10x less calories. So it's very, very, very powerful. Just upping your protein percentage by a few percentage, you eat, a lot, hundreds of calories less per day. And so we have this in human studies, we have this in even better outlined in rodent studies. And then, like I said, the highest rodent study I could find was 50%
Mm,
protein by calories. And
mhm.
you do get some very lean rodents with very low fat mass. They just eat less.
Well, so let me try. So what do rodents need? 12% protein? Do you happen to know what their ideal?
When rodents self-select, there are studies looking at self-selection, And so we know what certain animals will self-select, dogs and cats and
Mhm.
rodents. We kind of don't have that in humans, honestly, because we'll just select donuts every time. But yeah, rodents, I can't remember exactly, but I think they're self-selecting
14.
something in the teens. It's somewhere
Yeah,
in the 13 to
14.
19% protein,
We'll
something like
call it
that.
15. We'll call it 15%. So if the rodent's supposed to eat 15% protein, and that's just how it lives long and is healthy, and it just knows how much to eat when it goes out in the wild. And if you give them that diet, they eat that and they're fine. But then if you split a group and then you dilute that rodent chow and make it, say, 11% protein, so therefore you have more carbs and fats within that chow, they eat more to get the same amount of protein. And they went back and looked at the grams of protein. They're like, oh, wow, both of these groups actually got the same amount of protein in grams. The group with the diluted food just had to eat more of it to get that. Therefore, they got overweight, they died sooner, they had less offspring, stuff like that.
Yep, yep. And you can look at protein either by percentage of weight or mass, or volume, or calories. And any way you look at it, they're conserving this amount of protein and then overeating something, more weight, more volume, more calories, more everything to get there. So protein leverage tends to just be very, very important and pretty universal. Now, I know you told me to do the fifth grade level
Yeah.
or whatever. But just to make it more confusing, I'm sorry. When you get to super low protein, it starts going backwards.
Mhm.
So, like, the very peak, the fattest rodents are at about like 9% protein. That's like maximum. That's where you're going to really overeat.
This
But
is
then if you
like
go down,
human
oh,
processed food, people who eat at McDonald's.
that's basically so junk food is about 9% protein. And we do these cafeteria diet studies. The way to get rodents the very fattest is to feed them basically a wide variety of human junk foods, and that will get you the very fast rodents. But they make obesogenic rodent chow that's mirrored kind of the same way. And this peak obesity is about 9% protein. Then if you go really ultra low protein where you're barely able to live on it, like 5%, 4%, they actually start eating less and less and less. And that is also explained by protein leverage because they just kind of give up on eating because it's a sign of nutrient scarcity. And so their intake actually nosedives and gets really low again. So it's this weird U-shaped curve where, north of, 10% protein all the way up to 50, you're just eating less and less and less, getting thinner, 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 maximum obesity at 9%. But then a fall off on the other side where ultra low protein, like you're barely alive, you start eating way less as well. And
That's
that it's weird.
Well, yeah, it is a little weird, but that's also explains like Freely Banana Girl or the Kempner like starch diet, 90% starch, or the potato diet. It's just there is this weird thing, and maybe it's evolutionary. It's like this way of keeping us alive, or you're just yeah, you end up eating less altogether.
Yep, yep. And this is, Rabinowitz and Simpson have done a lot of work with the FGF21 and this like hormonal signal in really nutrient scarce environments and low protein environments, which kind of explains the sugar diet hack and all of these, like these ultra low protein keto oil based diets and all these things you can kind of explain similarly with this protein leverage, but it is a U-shaped curve and there is this super big fall off on the very low end, which is weird too. So yeah.
So yeah, that was good that you brought that up because the point of this elegant theory is that it fits everything makes sense within this paradigm. So even potato diet and sugar diet can make sense in this paradigm.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well then let's move on to oh, no, before we move on, can you get fat on protein? I was trying to look up studies on this. I know there's some overfeeding studies, but can you get fat from eating pure protein?
No. So you really can't. So it's so inefficient. Basically, the inefficiencies are massive. You have to deaminate the protein, you have to convert it mostly into glucose, or you have to, you know, perform de novo lipogenesis. And all of these are so energy consuming that you don't get enough calories from it to endlessly perform this. So basically, if you Now, we don't have some of the studies that would really answer this. Like if you took an animal and gavaged it, where you put in a feeding tube and just like pumped them full of protein 24 hours a day, like could they actually generate some fat out of that? I don't know. We don't have those studies because they probably wouldn't get
Right.
approved and they
Well, it's
wouldn't
pretty
get
irrelevant
IRB.
anyway.
Right.
Yeah,
So, but like on a practical level, where any animal is eating to satiety, you can't get fat and protein.
you can't.
Just
Well,
can't
it's
eat
like
that
rabbit
much.
starvation too. We know it from history where if you just eat pure protein, you die.
Right. And we don't have any studies where any animal is fed 100% protein because that wouldn't get approval either because they probably would die. And so we kind of don't have that information. But let's just say as the protein percent gets higher and higher and higher, these animals get thinner and thinner with no sign of stopping. So it's nothing good's going to happen at 100% protein. It's not going to be good.
Well, I think we need to take a detour then because I think we don't even need to count protein as calories. Like if you're looking at a package, like you should not see protein calories. It's like I try to break it down for people. I say nutrient calories versus energy calories. You say protein versus energy. I say nutrient versus energy, which is just let's include nutrients. I remember you always saying you're sort of accidentally going to get nutrients, the vitamins and minerals along with the protein. But so you say nutrient calories, energy calories. You want more. Basically, everyone on earth needs more nutrient calories, and basically, everyone on earth needs less energy calories. Yet we count them as the same thing. This is the
Right.
main thing. If I were to talk to any calorie bro on the planet, any scientist on the planet that's talking to me about CECO, calories in, calories out, all this stuff, I'm saying we want more of one type of calorie because we're never going to gain weight from protein. We want more nutrients, we want more vitamins and minerals. Usually people are deficient, and we want less energy. Yet we count all calories as the same, and it kind of boggles my mind. I just don't really get it.
Right. It's not that helpful. And that's why just, I'm going to eat less calories is kind of not the greatest. And that's really why I wrote the PE diet because it's like, oh, you actually want more of this calorie and less of these calories. So yeah, I feel for all the calorie denialists because they're kind of right in that just using calories is not that helpful. Um, because of protein. Yep, absolutely. You're preaching the
But
choir. I totally
but yeah,
agree.
but is there a different way to do it? Like how I don't know. It's not like we're gonna change the nutrition labeling. That's impossible, probably. But if you see a label and it just says 140 calories, that doesn't tell me anything unless you're
Right.
looking at how much protein. So it's like, is there a way to do it where we can subtract? Like, I have no idea. Like, add more. It's like you want more of the protein calories and you want less of the energy calories from the fats or carbs. Can you show this to me on a package so I can make a better decision?
Yeah, I mean, so it's tricky because you can't really escape from calories. They're so just ubiquitous. So in the Hava app, for example, there's two goals to the Hava app. There's getting enough protein. So there's this protein circle you want to close, right? So your whole goal for the day is to eat enough protein. That's actually number one goal. Number two goal is to have a high satiety per calorie. So you're just automatically eating less calories in the process. So you're trying to do two things, eat enough protein and then eat a high enough satiety per calorie that you just automatically eat less calories. The app does track calories, but nobody really cares because you're just trying to have a high satiety per calorie because you're not going to eat as much calories. It works great. So that's kind of how we're handling it in that app. But yeah, you're right. The whole idea of protein has calories as well is a little bit problematic in my opinion because you're really just trying to accomplish those two goals: more
Mhm.
protein, less carbs and fats. And the bodybuilders do it with just tracking macros. It's like you have to hit this protein macro but you can't go over these carbs and fat macros, and that's kind of what the PE diet was all about too. And yeah, you're absolutely right. That is the biggest flaw with just looking at calories on the packaging. It's just not telling you what you need to know.
Mhm. Well, one day it'll be solved. I don't know. I wanna make an app too one day or some kinda system that just helps people make it simpler. So, tell us more about what goes into satiety per calorie other than protein. We've hit protein to death. Now let's go to
Got
the next one.
Yeah, so there's four big pillars, right? Protein percent, boom, huge. Density. That this is a very, very big deal. So we have just tons of studies on humans and other animals where if you double the energy density of food, you will double your caloric intake, more or less, roughly. I mean, that's a big,
Mhm.
big deal. You can take any animal and just pour oil on its food, and they will eat up to twice as many calories. So that is a very, very big deal. So protein percent, energy density, fiber. So let's say you're eating carbs. Now if you're low carb, you don't eat carbs, you don't eat fiber, you don't care, you think it's all stupid. But for anybody who's eating a fair amount of carbohydrate, the ratio of fiber to non-fiber carbohydrate is a massive big deal. And everybody knows this instinctively. It's like, okay, I'm going to eat, 200 grams carbs from sugar. Yeah, that's just like
Just a
that's a like hardly anything.
couple
But if you
tablespoons.
eat that many carbs and it's all fiber from, carrots or celery or something like that, yeah, that's just way different satiety per calorie. So if you're eating carbs, the fiber percentage is a massive big deal. So those are the first three pillars, right? You got protein percentage, you got energy density, you got fiber as a ratio of carbohydrate. And then the fourth one is hedonics, because let's face it, a lot of people know what they should be eating. Like, you're supposed to eat a salad, right? You're supposed to eat a boiled skinless chicken breast, but there's a donut right there. You're eating the donut. That is hedonics. That is this combination of high energy density carb and high energy density fat together. By definition, the protein is low, the fiber is low, the water is low. It's just basically refined carb, refined fat together. Crazy delicious. That's all of your ice cream and your pizza and your donuts and your candy bars. And you will actually just go out of your way to eat these foods if they're around, because they're addictive and amazing and spike dopamine in your brain. And a massive chunk of the obesity epidemic is just pure addiction, basically, because you're choosing these foods over and over, even though they're harming your health, because they taste so amazing and they're so rewarding to your brain. And it's not your fault. That's actually the way humans are wired, right? We were wired to, if hunter gatherers found a donut tree in the wilderness, they would binge eat the F out of that stuff, right? So that's just how we're wired. We're literally wired to get as many calories as we can. And our brain will light up if we're eating something that has a high caloric density, refined carb, refined fat. That's normal animal physiology, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just having this knowledge and working with it, and ratioing the high hedonic foods with the lower hedonic foods, and controlling like the frequency and the magnitude and the amounts and quantities and ratios of the two is what it's all about. But the hedonics is the fourth big
Mhm.
major pillar. And in the Hava app and the Satiety Per Calorie score that Dr. Einfeld and myself came up with, these are the four big pillars. And like, to be honest, we didn't, we there's tons of research on each of these individual components, but there's not a lot of research looking at all of them together, right? And so a lot of this is not like, we don't have a study that says exactly if you change one this way and the other three this way, exactly what happens, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of this we had to interpolate until we got hundreds of thousands of person day data back from the Hava app, where you can literally just graph out in three-dimensional glory exactly what
Mhm.
the caloric intake per day on average was for each of these factors. And we didn't really know, like when we first made it, we weren't 100% sure which one was going to be the strongest, which one was going to be the weakest. But once you graph it all out, it is obvious that protein is massive. Like,
Mm.
protein is huge. Protein is the most powerful of all these factors for sure. And you can just see it on a 3D graph. It's crazy. Fiber is admittedly probably the smallest one. I'm going to throw the carnivores a bone there, but it's probably bigger than they think. It is definitely a real factor. It
Well,
deserves to be one of the four. But yeah, and so like that's those are the four components, and they're we're kind of like there's a big deal about sodium and sodium potassium. Potassium raises diet calories, sodium tends to lower it, and we just lumped those in with the hedonics
mm,
because it's kind of too small an effect to have its own little category, but
mhm.
there are factors like that in there as well.
Okay, that's great. I love that. We gotta go into each one a little more now, and maybe we start with the fiber one because you just mentioned it, and I know it sometimes triggers people. I actually have a little bit of different view in fiber lately, and I'll do my little shtick. It's that, of course, all the epidemiology says that people who eat more fiber are healthier. And I think like, people think that fiber is this magical substance, and I've seen tweets, and it's some, like, mainstream kinda guy, he's like, "The biggest problem today is lack of fiber." I'm like, "That is not true." The lack of you kinda have this paradigm wrong, right? It's not that it's lack of fiber, it's lack of whole foods. You know what I mean? It's like, it's fiber is just a proxy for eating whole foods. Eating is a zero-sum game. If you're eating more fiber, you are pushing other foods off your plate, probably processed foods, right? So, of course, all the epidemiology lines up, and this makes sense. But fiber is an indigestible substance. There's soluble fiber that can be used by your gut bacteria, and you can get that by accident, kind of. I'm just thinking, I mean, if you're just eating a decent diet, you're accidentally getting enough soluble fiber to, be healthy. So, again, is this making sense? Like, and this is from you. This is from learning from you for many years. That I just don't think fiber is a goal. You talk about water and volume of food. So, if you get, the main benefit of fiber is that it is an intact food, and it has water in it and volume in it. So, are you kind of there with me on this? That fiber is sort of meaningless. It's not. It's a non-nutritive substance, pretty much, and that you're really just talking about volume of food and intactness, not fiber itself. What do you think?
Um, well, so I sort of hear what you're saying, but so humans eat a certain weight and volume of food every
Yes.
day, all somewhat independent of how many calories are in there. Water is the weight of food. Like 90 something percent of energy density of food is just the oil to water spectrum. Like as oil gets or fat gets higher and higher, water gets lower and lower. As water
Mhm.
gets higher and higher, fat gets lower and lower. This fat water spectrum, which I talk a lot about in Satiety Per Calorie, and I just I have pictures and explanations, and this fat water spectrum is pretty much everything about energy density in food, to for the most part. And that's why you always want, protein higher, you want water higher. But fiber is volume. Nothing else is contributing to volume the way fiber does. And volume is a big deal in your GI tract. So if you eat like 10 pounds of asparagus, it takes so long to digest that it mechanically distends the lower small intestine. And that's where you have a ton of these K cells that are emitting all of these incretins or GLP-1, right? You get a huge GLP-1 spike from mechanically distending the lower small intestine from fiber. It's not happening from water or protein. It's
Mm.
mostly fiber. So you actually get like this major Ozempic effect from distension of the lower small intestine from this fiber because it takes so long to digest. So I actually think fiber is definitely giving people a boost to their natural incretin secretion, GLP-1, from distension of the lower small intestine because it is so voluminous. And you can't quite pull that off with anything else. You can, but it's going to have more calories in it. You
Mhm.
can't pull it off with like almost no calories the way you can with fiber. So the fiber does this very special satiety per calorie trick that other stuff doesn't do. And like also soluble fiber, it converts into this gel that kind of coats the small intestine. And not only do you get this GLP-1 spike, but you kind of don't absorb other calories quite as well. So
Mm.
it's doing a couple things that you actually can't pull off with any other substitute. And so I used to think, like if you just look at my Twitter from 5 years ago, I was saying a bunch of like hot takes, like fiber's dumb, and it's like
Mm.
do I really need poop just falling out of my butt like a cow all day long because I eat so much grass and cellulose? No, and it's like every doctor knows that the second you get hospitalized with diverticulitis, you're put on a low residue diet, a liquid diet, a no fiber diet. The last thing you want is fiber. Anybody who has inflammatory bowel disease or Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or like fiber's bad in so many situations. How could it ever be good? But it is like a massive boost to satiety per calorie. And if you look at some of the just the most ripped and jacked permaline people I know are eating something with soluble fiber in it intentionally, like athlete X is eating steel cut oats every morning, but then like an entire bowl of microwave congealed liquid egg whites with like some salsa on top of it. So he's getting like this protein very intentionally, but he doesn't just stop there. He's also eating the soluble fiber because it allows him to squeak by with even less caloric intake. And so I don't know. Like I'm gonna say that fiber is actually kind of good when it comes to satiety per calorie.
Okay, no, no, no. I think you're correct, and you changed my mind a little bit. I didn't think you had more of the like the long lasting in the GI tract effect of fiber, and then that is specific, not just the water and volume. So you've like disentangled this fiber from the water and volume aspect, and so I appreciate that actually. I think my shtick remains is that we misunderstand fiber. I think it's like it's kind of good for a different reason than we think. Maybe that's my shtick. It's like people think that fiber is this magical nutritive substance when it's like it's good because you're eating whole foods, it's good because you're eating less processed foods, and it's good for satiety per calorie, but no one knows in the mainstream satiety per calorie. They have no idea what we're talking about. Like how like 99.9% of the world doesn't consider satiety per calorie. So that's what I'm saying is they're misunderstanding it, is they're not thinking about it probably from this perspective.
Right, right. And I hear what you're saying. Like fiber, it has this magical health halo, like it's doing something. And it's really more just an inert substance that's diluting out calories and mechanically distending your lower small intestine and all of these like boring things that you could get with like styrofoam or something. So yeah, I'm totally on board with that.
Okay, I'm glad we we kind of worked out that little shtick there. So they go back to energy density because I think we kind of glossed over it. You kind of, you talked about it a bit with the oil to water ratio, but just give people a little more content on the number two factor is the energy density. I still don't think we've got that fifth grade explanation yet.
Yeah, yeah. So like Barbara Rolls has all these crazy studies. She's like a energy density researcher, and she took meals and basically crafted a meal that had 2x the energy density and another meal that had 1x the energy density. And she did this with just a bunch of like emulsifiers and fiber and concoctions and things like that. So everything else is controlled, right? Protein's exactly the same, fiber's exactly the same, tastiness was the same, hedonics, everything was the same. People were rated the same satisfaction and had the same level of fullness after eating it. Very, very tightly controlled studies. Literally, only difference is 2x kcals per gram, and people ate 2x the calories, more or less. Not quite. It was a little bit lower than that. But basically, if you within a certain range, if you double the caloric density, you eat double the calories. And if that's not a big deal, I don't know what is.
We'll explain the caloric then a little bit more because I think it was a little too technical still, but like
Oh, right, right, right.
specifically, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like if you have, let's say you have an 8 ounce cup of sugar water, right? Or just some sort of like pure liquid sugar. Like you have
Mm.
an eight. Let's say you have an 8 ounce cup of syrup and you drink the whole thing, right? You're getting 4 kcals per gram. If you have this same cup of oil and you drink that, you're getting 9 kcals per gram. So you're getting more than twice as many calories, but you drink the same 8 ounce cup of liquid. So you kind of feel the same on the fullness right
Mhm.
afterwards in terms of what's in your stomach and, the that sort of thing. So you're basically getting, as the caloric density of what you consume goes up, you're eating the same weight and volume and maybe the same amount of protein and you feel the same level of fullness, but you actually got twice as many calories. And by the time you absorb it all from your intestine, you're having to store twice as much fat on your body
You're
with
getting
one
you
than
got
with the
twice as
other.
much energy. Yeah, it's kind of the opposite hack of satiety per calorie. It's how to eat less. Get so you want more protein, less nutrients. So the foods that help do that are the whole foods. I guess I'll get more concrete. Yes, the foods that have low energy density and low caloric density means meat, eggs, fish, vegetables, fruit, generally all these things that are just intact. And then when you start processing them, they get a lot more energy dense, and you're just getting more energy per protein or per volume.
Right, right, right. And like a lot of people don't like to believe this in the low carb keto space, in the basically carbohydrate insulin hypothesis space. But the easiest way to fatten any animal is just add a refined fat to its food. You literally pour oil on the food, and every rodent will eat more chow. Every animal eats more calories. And inadvertently, it's almost passive. You almost can't help it. You're just eating the same food and you're eating more calories. So there's this massive passive real factor about just adding fat to food. You're eating more calories. So all of your obesogenic rodent chow, they just add a bunch more fat, some sort of refined fat to it. And like Dr. Speakman has all these crazy rodent studies where you have these huge matrices of adding and subtracting carbs and fats and things like that. And you for sure make animals the fattest by adding more fat, refined fat to their food. Now, of course, there's other factors like you get the protein low enough and you get a lot of refined carbs and fats together for the tastiness and the hedonics. And that's where you really get the maximum intake. But within certain ranges, just adding more fat, animals eat more calories because it's just there. It's fairly passive and it's a very real thing. And it doesn't really fit in with the carbohydrate insulin model. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
pouring oil on your food shouldn't make you fatter from eating more calories. But oh yeah, it actually does. And so I think that satiety per calorie explains it perfectly. Carb insulin model doesn't explain that at all.
Mhm. But yeah, you could also do the opposite is you can pour sugar and still gain fat too.
Absolutely.
It's just kinda obvious. It's just more energy that your body has to burn off until it burns off its own fat.
Right, right, right. Yep, exactly.
It's pretty simple. Okay, we don't have too much time, but your diagrams are amazing, but I'm an engineer, so I don't know if other people think they're amazing or they just think they're super complicated.
Uh,
But anyway, so you have the liver in the center of a lot of these diagrams. And for some years now, I've been thinking kind of like a liver centric view. I think maybe it's when I first talked to Gabor Dosi like a million years ago, like 6, 7 years ago. Have you ever heard of Gabor or Dosi?
oh yeah.
Okay, yeah, good. So he gets into the incretins, all this stuff you're talking about, the GLP-1 and these satiety mechanisms and level of processing. And the more you process it, there's different reactions in your body and your gut. But anyway, I was thinking about the liver-centric model of kind of metabolic disease. I don't know if it explains everything, but do you kind of put it at the center of it? Because it literally is in the center of some of your drawings? But
The
just yeah.
Oh yeah, the liver is central to all energy partitioning. All of your glucose management is liver. Buffering glucose out of the bloodstream, adding glucose into the bloodstream. It's all happening in the liver. The liver is storing carbs, storing fats, managing all of your glucose. Of course, the pancreas, it has a fuel pressure sensor in it as well. That's like added glucagon or insulin. But the liver is the central hub for pretty much all of the macronutrients. So it's basically just that's the way animals work is the liver does all of this stuff. All of the macronutrients are going through the liver and it's very central to especially glucose management and protein deamination and all of these things are that you have to put the liver in the center anytime you're talking about metabolism.
So, how I think of it though, this is more practical for people because again, I think you just use like 30 words that maybe not everyone knows. Is that when people get fat, I see them eating a lot of things or drinking a lot of things that are not processed well by the liver. You're kind of overloading it. Like if you think of like alcohol, right? Alcohol has to be processed by the liver. People who drink alcohol usually have some sort of beer belly, or it's easier to store fat. If you're eating all these foods and you're drinking alcohol, your liver is trying to deal with a lot. Processed foods, added sugar, probably seed oils, different refined fats and carbs have to be dealt with by the liver. It seems like if you don't overload the liver with these highly refined foods, you will do better. That's how I kind of think of like more, like a higher level, just from an everyday's perspective, every layman's perspective.
Yeah, yeah. I think that makes sense, and you're absolutely right. Like, if you really want fatty liver, fructose and alcohol are pretty high on the list. Saturated fat is as well, and if you the very best for fatty liver is those three macros, like fructose, saturated fat, and alcohol will give you the fattiest fatty liver of all time. But yeah, I kind of like what you're saying there, and the liver is extremely central to all of this stuff.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just more of a, if you're talking to an average Joe out there, just like, if you stop drinking alcohol, stop eating refined foods, you're just going to do a lot better. And I guess that also just is about nutrient density and about satiety per calorie too, more than just the liver. But I don't know why. It kind of made more sense to me when you think of it as just like, don't overload your liver with energy. It's just,
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right though, but you're totally right because like look at alcohol. If you drink a little bit of alcohol really, really slowly, your liver's just humming along, detoxifying all of it, and everything's fine. But if you overwhelm that, it's things are a lot worse in terms of fatty liver and liver damage and liver
mhm.
injury and bad outcomes. And so the same thing is true of fructose. A little bit spread out, no problem, but a whole bunch right at once, you're getting a lot of de novo lipogenesis. And so you're absolutely right about that. I think
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay, maybe just maybe I don't know if it's gonna help people, but yeah, if you're eating tons of processed foods, which are just what you said, high saturated fat, well, all fat. I don't all fat and fructose just from refined sugars. Then yeah, it's just bad. And if but I'm not scared. It's not like I can never eat fructose, or it's just like, do it where your body can handle it.
Right, right, right. Yep, yep, absolutely. Yeah, the dose makes the poison, and the ratios of all of this stuff is kind of where it's at. Like a little bit here and there, no problem. All the
Yeah.
time, every time, big problem.
And that's most of the US and world is
Hmm.
all day, all the time. All right. This is great. So, you have a website for your book
But yeah, satietypercalorie.com.
and also for yourself? Do you have Ted
Yeah,
Naiman?
yeah, tednaiman.com. I'm on all the socials at tednaiman, tednaiman.com, societypercalorie.com. But these books are also just available anywhere books are sold. But if you want to buy Satiety Per Calorie with a 100% money back guarantee from me, like I will refund your money personally, go to satietypercalorie.com, buy the PDF version. If that is not the single best book you've ever read in your life on the general principles of diet and exercise, I will give you a full refund and you keep the book. So it's kind of, you can't lose.
I love it. Anything else before we go? We got it all. What do you think?
I think so. And yeah, I have to say, like, the book is super lengthy, all these geeky diagrams. You're right. I'm probably losing a massive chunk of the population. And like, I self published, I don't have an editor. And any editor would have just cut out like 90% of the book and just left in a couple pages of fluff that anyone could understand. And so it's a lot. It's a very heavy read. Don't buy it. It's you
But
don't like
no,
it.
no, no. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
it's
It's a lot, but it's actually very straightforward and easy to understand if you just read it. It's overwhelming, right? To look at, there's 570 pages or something, but I think it's great. Maybe that's just because I'm super into it, but good work.
we're we're on the exact same wavelength. So you're of course you're gonna love it, right? It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, other people like it too. So grab that. And yeah, man, thanks again.
Oh no, thanks for having me, man. Great to talk to you. I do feel like we're just like separated at birth. So keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Let's get the message out there. All right. I'll see you next time.
Sounds good.